Alright boys, welcome back to part 3. No intro for today's video just because I was feeling kind of lazy, but point is, I have two quick announcements before this video starts. Number one, there is going to be a My Hero Academia movie dropping very soon, this Saturday, probably 10 or 12 p.m. my time, and it's going to be What If Deku Was Rogue's Reincarnation from Fairy Tail, alongside with a collab with a good buddy of mine. And then announcement number 2, the Bardock series has been canceled. My heart wasn't in it anymore, and instead of dropping, lackluster content, I decided, you know what, let's just scrap it all together. Maybe I'll do it again some other day, but for now, that series, it's gone. But on the bright side, I'm having a lot of fun with this series, so you guys are definitely going to keep getting more videos of this. Oh, and one more quick thing, my voice right now is kind of like stuffy, just because it's like allergy season and stuff like that, and honestly, I feel really under the weather today. Like, I was supposed to go to the gym, but I just couldn't. My body feels weird. I'm having like these little migraines in the back of my head, like towards where my ear's at. I'm not sure what's going on, but all I know, I don't exactly feel good. So sorry if today's video sounds a little weird, but I'm gonna do my best to have fun, because honestly, I've been looking forward to recording part 3. But with that being said, we left off with Izuku wondering to himself, like, okay, who am I going to be facing off in the finals? Obviously, Izuku kind of knew who he was going to be facing off against, but he wanted to give the other students the benefit of the doubt. Regardless though, we inevitably come to the finals of the UA Sports Festival, which would be none other than Izuku versus Bakugo. And as you guys are expecting, it's kind of going to be a bit of a wash. I mean, the beginning of the battle, I'm imagining is actually not going to be that bad, but I feel like towards the end, once Izuku gets serious, like the in-character version that I'm building, it's not going to be very fun for Bakugo. So let's begin. The second that the bell would be announced, Izuku would just watch as Bakugo quickly blitzes towards him using his explosions, as finally, once he gets close enough to Deku, he would throw one explosion, which quickly gets blocked by Izuku's sand, as he catapults himself over the body of Izuku, in a very cool maneuver, leading him to try to throw an explosion to the back of his head. But when that explosion would actually hit, the Izuku that was standing in front of him would actually turn into sand itself as it begins to crumple into the ground, and Izuku would be revealed to be actually up in the air, floating, as sand would be carrying him. Izuku in this moment would be looking down on Bakugo, and Bakugo seeing this would begin to get enraged, because not only was Izuku literally and metaphorically looking down on him, but Bakugo just hated that feeling. And so quickly blitzing towards his direction, he attempted to keep throwing explosions after explosion after explosion, which finally led Bakugo to unleashing his biggest explosion that he could possibly muster, which would again be blocked by a pillar of sand that would appear in front of him. Bakugo at this point would grit his teeth before then finally telling Izuku that he wouldn't be so great without that quirk, as Izuku, upon hearing this, would turn towards Bakugo and ask him how he thinks he would fare if neither of them used their quirks, and Bakugo would say that he would completely decimate him, as Izuku, turning towards Bakugo with a grin, would then say, alright, how about we test that theory? No quirks, no explosions, just hand-to-hand combat. How's that, Bakugo? I'll give you a chance in this battle. I'll let you show off in front of all of these people. Show them how much better than me you are, Bakugo. So Bakugo would smirk and say, can't believe you agreed to this, Deku. I can't wait to embarrass you in front of everybody. You're nothing without your quirk. Remember that, as he would rush in towards Izuku's direction, throwing a punch which would quickly be slipped by Izuku, who using taijutsu would throw a spinning kick right at the stomach of Bakugo, who would proceed to hold it before then getting cut with an uppercut right at his chin. It would literally cut him, right? As following this attack, Bakugo looks back up before throwing a haymaker explosion at Izuku, breaking the rules of their contest, as Izuku with his sand, he would actually go on a grasp onto the hand of Bakugo, as he wouldn't be able to move it, and Izuku would wag his finger in front of him going before he then punches Bakugo square in the stomach once more, picking him up off the ground and then throwing a kick upwards, which would hit Bakugo in the chin once more, leaving Izuku's foot imprinted like the dust on his foot imprinted in Bakugo's face, sending him crashing onto the other side of the arena, as Bakugo would slowly get up angrily at Izuku, holding his hands together as he would say, AP shot, and from here a gigantic AP shot would shoot towards the direction of Izuku, as Izuku would quickly sidestep it before then rushing back in towards Bakugo, grabbing him by his shirt and telling him to just give up. There's no way he's gonna win this fight, as Bakugo in this moment would just think to himself that he has only one thing he can do, as Bakugo, grabbing onto both of Izuku's hands, would proceed to say, "Go to hell, damn it," throwing massive explosions right at the arms of Izuku, trying to pretty much like take his arms completely out of the equation, like completely leave him without arms. But unfortunately for Bakugo, once again it would be revealed to be a clone, as Izuku's not dumb enough to get close to Bakugo after saying stuff like that. So after the clone would completely explode in front of Bakugo's face, Izuku, using his sand, would quickly grab onto the legs of Bakugo as he drags him out of the arena slowly and just holds one hand up, telling everybody that he is here. As after that would happen, we would finally get the medal portion where Izuku would get first place, Katsuki Bakugo would get second, and Todoroki would get third. This would ultimately lead us to them having like a little bit of a time skip where they finally end up making their way to class. Now, because of the events that just previously happened, this would lead the League of Villains to wanting to take Bakugo for themselves and kind of like be like, oh, you know, like we can give you power, like become a villain, because he just showed off all those traits. Now in the original, obviously Bakugo was not giving into something like that, but this version of Katsuki Bakugo, which is getting completely embarrassed in front of everybody, like this wasn't just like a little UA fight, like the first battle they had, like the training one. No. Everybody around the world saw him get humiliated, and Bakugo could not stop thinking about that. He felt so much rage, so much jealousy, and as much as he tried to get stronger and do something so he could defeat Deku, he realized he just was completely out of his league. They're on two different playing fields when it comes to their powers, and Bakugo just is gonna have to accept that. So as they would finally return back to class, everybody would end up being told to pick hero names as well as their hero agencies. Now this is where I finally get to address something that so many of you guys absolutely destroyed me in the comments of part 1. Okay, I get it. There is a sand hero, sorry about that. The dude was so irrelevant that I didn't even know a sand quirk existed in My Hero Academia. But just to click back on the video and go into the comment section, like I bet you if I just scroll just for a tiny little bit, I'm gonna find a comment that says that. I hope you don't say, oh no, that's not it. Okay, amazing sand. Okay, there. Actually, funny enough, there's a sand hero named Snatch who appeared later in the manga. He got one shot by Dabi, which sucks because bro had one of the quirks that negates Shigaraki's decay. Comment was left by Lynx is a good boy. That's crazy. But anyways, yeah, there's a hero by the name of Snatch who apparently has a sand quirk, and obviously because, you know, now I finally have to address this means that Izuku would go on to be interning with Snatch, because I mean, like, who else is he gonna go with realistically? The dude has literally a sand quirk. And does Deku have a better sand ability than Snatch? I mean, come on now, it's kind of obvious. There's levels to this stuff, you know what I mean? But anyways, eventually Izuku would make his way towards the agency, where Izuku would pretty much find himself kind of just wasting a week. He really only went there because, like, yes, he had other internship opportunities, but going to a sand hero, seeing somebody who runs his agency like that would probably be good for later. Plus, Izuku completely understands that he's gonna have opportunities to intern with other heroes whenever he wants. Plus, this guy's a top 50 hero, so it's not that bad. But anyways, he would learn a couple of things about agency running and stuff like that. And while all this would be going on the other side of the world, Ida would currently literally be getting like paralyzed by Stain. Because in the anime, I don't know if you guys remember, but Stain was literally gonna kill Ida for being a fake hero, even though he wasn't even a full-fledged hero. But because I don't want things to get too dark, and I also don't want UA to completely shut down for the nature of this what if, I'm just gonna be saying that Stain in this timeline kind of has a little bit of mercy for Ida, stabbing him in the back, pretty much paralyzing him, never allowing him to continue in his hero work. So after news of this would break out, Izuku would literally be training with his with Snatch, as 4 days into it, you would get a call for all the rest of the hero students to return to UA, where they would all be informed of the tragedy that happened with Tenya Ida. After all of this would be said and done, Izuku, hearing about this, would quickly set his sights on the hero killer Stain, wanting to bring him to justice. Not because he hurt Tenya Ida specifically, but what this is doing and what it stands for. While Izuku can understand trying to take out fake heroes, Ida was not a fake hero. He just had a bad day. He was overcome with revenge and he made a bad decision. But what Stain did is he took the opportunity for many civilians to be saved one day. Because yeah, was Ida going to be the greatest hero of all time? Probably not. But Ida was at least going to save 1,000 people in his hero career. And now those people are going to die. And it's all thanks to Stain and his wicked and twisted philosophy. And Deku's going to make sure that he handles that. So, As a 1-week break would take place for UA to pretty much kind of like settle things back in and the news media to finally get off of their backs, Izuku would have an entire week to track down the hero killer. And Izuku, knowing that this hero killer doesn't stay in one place for too long, would wait to see before the next hero would show up dead on the news. So another town nearby would actually end up having a hero die, and the markings of the hero killer stain would be there, which would lead Izuku to realizing, okay, this is clearly him. So what Izuku would do is pretty much shapeshift using his sand ability. Much like he can make clones, he ends up using his sand to reshape his facial structure and make himself look like Endeavor, which would pretty much lead him to begin, or no, not Endeavor, because I feel like then he might actually get in trouble. He just makes himself seem out to be like a fake hero, like a random like D-lister hero, just like the ones that Bakugo references in the beginning of the anime. So Izuku makes himself out to look like a hero who's just kind of like out in the alleyways, and he ends up pretty much going towards a dealer, right? Where he makes himself look super sketchy and stuff like that. Stain obviously being around and it being nighttime would notice this. And so as Izuku was like doing like a very, very like what's the word I'm looking for? He's doing a very cliche like evil laugh, being like, can't believe I get to be a hero and do all this. Suddenly, hero killer Stain would land behind him before saying that he's the kind of hero he hates most. He's gonna be purged from this world tonight. As Izuku, turning behind him, would have his face begin to melt off, as Stain would see that and would be like, what the? As Izuku would be standing right in front of Stain, and he would tell him he knew he'd be able to drive him out. As from here, Stain, seeing that it was nothing but a kid, would pretty much tell him to get lost, that if he's here in search of revenge, he's gonna kill him. He's not gonna cut him any slack like he did the last kid. As Izuku, from this moment, would proceed to have sand begin building up on Stain's leg, which would hold him in place, as Izuku would say, no, you don't understand. You're the one who's not gonna get any slack. As he would go on to crush both of Stain's legs, making him completely immobile. As from here, Izuku would pretty much slam Stain in a dumpster and just like leave him there, as Stain would just sit there completely immobilized until eventually the police would end up arriving, and Stain would end up pretty much just being taken in, with Izuku making his way back towards his hometown as quick as possible. Eventually though, after these events would take place, we would pretty much cut back to UA, where all of them would be told about the final exams that they have coming up, as well as the forest training camp, being told that if they fail these exams, they're going to be taking extra classes to catch up on their hero work and their studies. So everybody would be doing their absolute best to study up and train up and figure out what exactly they're going to be doing, as eventually rumors would even begin to spread that they're just going to be facing off against robots. But unfortunately for class 1A, it was not robots at all. Instead, they end up facing off against their teachers, and much like in the original, all the other events go down just like in canon, which ultimately leads us to Bakugo and Izuku versus All Might. This battle would be kind of interesting due to the nature of the relationship of Bakugo and Deku. In this timeline, Bakugo, while he would try to be his normal self of like belittling Izuku and stuff like that, he knows that he can't exactly do that, because for the last 2 moments, he's been completely humbled by him. They don't exactly have a positive relationship, so everything would be kind of chippy, as eventually, Bakugo pretty much just tells Izuku to stay out of his way, as he blasts off towards the direction of All Might, beginning to try to engage him in a 1v1 battle, trying to see what he can do. This would basically lead to Bakugo getting beat to a pulp, as tears would begin coming out of his eyes as he, gets up with sheer will, trying to face off against All Might, and All Might would literally begin to feel bad. Like, he doesn't want to beat on this kid like this, but he's not giving up, and there's something that's keeping him up. It's the drive to prove that he can do this, that he can hold his own against him, that he can be a #1 hero. But as every day passes, and every single time that he's getting humiliated and humbled, Bakugo is just being shown the hard, cold truth that he can't be that guy, and that would haunt him. Eventually, All Might would have to restrain him using bars and knocking him out, as essentially, after Izuku sees all this, he would kind of feel bad for Bakugo, seeing that his whole life, theology and his whole, everything that he had pretty much stood for his entire life was just crumbling before his very eyes. And honestly, Izuku felt a little bad. So now, Izuku was about to get his get back for Bakugo. not as much for Bakugo, but just to show that, you know, it could be done or something like that. I don't know, just I guess it is to pay back Bakugo, but he kind of hates to admit it, right? That's like the words that I was actually looking for. But anyways, essentially a gigantic sand tsunami would appear right in front of All Might, as All Might would throw a punch right at it, causing the tsunami to split right in the center. But as that happens, a gigantic beast of a monster would appear before him, as it would slam its hand right down on All Might, who narrowly manages to catch it and would begin to be crushed into the ground. But in this moment, the ground itself would begin to soften up, as it would be revealed that the ground he was standing on was sand itself. He would begin to sink into the ground as All Might would begin to get worried, realizing that he's inside of quicksand. And Izuku would walk up closer and closer to All Might, who inside of quicksand, even though he's as strong as he is, he was unable to do anything, because this sand was literally like hugging him so tightly and also so loosely at the same time, where even if All Might tried to like move and like use his strength to break out, the sand would like quickly soften up, leading All Might to not be able to like brute force his way out of it. So as All Might would struggle more and more, Izuku would stand before All Might, as he pretty much tells him to just yield already, that there's no way he's busting out of that, and if he does, he's in for a world of pain. From here, All Might would pretty much begin to smile towards the direction of Izuku before telling him he's extremely proud of his performance, telling him that he definitely went plus ultra, as Izuku in this moment would just kind of smirk, but All Might would finally like crack that and be like, but I haven't gone plus ultra, as you know, it'd be kind of like a cringy but also cool scene. Like, it would have been cool if All Might's voice actor says it, but because I said it, it was just kind of lame. But anyways, All Might eventually ends up breaking out, and Izuku would be completely stunned, as All Might would rush towards the direction of Izuku, but Izuku, using his sand, would grab All Might by all four of his limbs, as Izuku would say he didn't want to have to do this, and from his left hand would form a sand chainsaw, as he would begin getting closer and closer to All Might, who would break out of one of the restraints, as sand would begin to get closer and closer, covering him in such a thick layer that it would look like a mountain was covering All Might, and he was just at the very tippity top, as Izuku would get closer and closer and closer to All Might, who, realizing that he literally can't escape this time no matter what he does, would pretty much just tell Izuku that he quits. As from here, Izuku would kind of stop the chainsaw from continuing to spin, as he would tell All Might that that was smart. Everybody in class 1A would be stunned, being like, well, the only reason that happened was because All Might had those restraints on him, and everybody's just kind of lying to themselves, being like, yeah, that had to be why. Like, there's no way Izuku's stronger than All Might, but deep down inside, they all kind of knew that Izuku was really kind of that guy. So after that would happen, we would finally zoom into all of the kids on the bus ride making their way to the forest training camp, where once there, all of them end up pretty much making their way off of the bus on top of a mountaintop, where they're like, hey, why is the camp so far away? When suddenly, Mandalay would throw each and every single one of them off the cliff, as all of them have to go through an intense 4 hours of defeating these rock monsters to finally make it to the camp. And once they would end up doing so, they would end up having a nice warm cup meal by the two of the wild pussycats. But anyways, after that would happen, everybody ends up enjoying their food, and we would have approximately, I want to say 4 days of inactivity happening, where like nothing really goes down. They're kind of just training and stuff like that, until eventually we would have the night where the League of Villains attacks. Their objective: A, capture Katsuki Bakugo, and B, try to kill that annoying Izuku kid. So the League of Villains with those objectives would try to do just that. And eventually we would have the moment where Koda would end up leaving the camp, as Izuku, like in the original, actually ends up following him kind of in a weird way, just because he knows that Koda lost his parents to a hero attack, and Izuku can actually relate to him. He lost his dad to a hero attack. So wanting to go over there and see what's up, he would sort of just follow behind, just kind of like giving Koda his space, knowing that when you feel this way, you don't want someone to come up to you and be like, oh, I'm sorry for your loss, or I know what it's like. Like, Izuku knows that. That's not what he wanted to hear when he was a kid. He just wanted someone to be right there, someone to just listen. That's all he wanted. And Izuku's gonna do that, but from afar. Eventually, after a couple of minutes would pass and he would see Koda sobbing, he would begin to be ready to maybe go over there and say something to him. But before he could do that, Muscular coming out of the shadows would make his presence known, as Muscular, going on to let out an evil grin, would proceed to say that he got lucky, that he gets to do all the killing he wants tonight, as Muscular would like have his cloak taken off by himself, as Koda, seeing Muscular, would say, it's you, you're the one who killed my parents. And Izuku, seeing that and looking towards the direction of Muscular, would begin to be enraged. He almost could see that Muscular was the exact same villain that killed his father. And after hearing those words come out of Ida's mouth, everything about Izuku's demeanor would change. Izuku, coming out of the shadows, would grab Koda with the sand before then taking him to safety, just gliding him away, as Izuku would crack his neck and say, you know, it's scum like you that I hate the most. I don't think society's gonna care much when I kill you. As from here, Muscular would begin to laugh maniacally, being like, you kill me? You must be kidding, brat. You're gonna need at least another 100 years before you could do that. As he throws a punch straight at the direction of Izuku, cracking the ground, which would then lead to Izuku looking up at him with enraged eyes. Sand would begin to cover the entirety of Muscular, as he would begin to slowly crush Muscular, who would extend his muscle fibers, growing in size, as Izuku would say, perfect. You're gonna pop like a balloon, you know that? As he would crush him, leaving Muscular's muscles entirely crushed, making it so that like he was completely taken out of the equation. And once Muscular was finally completely defenseless, Izuku would tell him that he's gonna bury him 1,000 feet underground. As Muscular in this moment would begin to scream out in fear, in complete terror, as Izuku would begin sinking him into the ground, as Muscular would be like, stop, no, wait, and then you would finally like hear the screams finally stop, as Muscular, being buried into the ground, would just sit there without any more replies. Eventually, we would skip over to the perspective of Izuku as he snapped out of it, and Shukaku would tell him, color me impressed, kid. I didn't think you had it in you to take things that far. As from here, Izuku would say, good riddance. The world's better off without someone like him in it. As he would pretty much go on a walk away from that direction, eventually running into Tokiyami and Dupli Arms, helping Tokiyami control Dark Shadow, as finally he would bump into the rest of the girls from their class, as, you know, once that happens, he would end up saving Toya, not Toya, but he would end up saving Uraraka and the Frog Girl, right? Which would ultimately lead them to finally, like, rushing towards the direction of where Todoroki and Bakugo are, which I know it's the opposite order, but for this timeline, trust, this is how it's going to happen, as essentially they would end up finding out that not only was Katsuki Bakugo kidnapped, but Todoroki was as well.